When we think of vast colonial empires, the British Empire is often one that springs to mind, but indeed this empire had a very much equally imperialistic sister, the French Empire. What was the legacy of this empire? Why was it important? What were the cultural characteristics? Was it any good? Was it all just a load of evil? From Africa to Cameroon to French Indochina, this is the French Empire. Right, I'll be taking you on a 10-part series, 10 episodes, right from the downfall of Napoleon all the way up to modern day. So 200 years of history, a lot to cover, a lot to crack through. This is the French Empire, and I hope you enjoy this series. A land of interesting straw hats, very fascinating people, spices, rice, great plantations, weather, stunning, got some rain in there. The last place you would expect to find a Frenchman, but indeed the French were there, in their land of French Indochina. However, as you can see by this map of the world, following World War II, France's empire was at its territorial height. However, like with most post-colonial things, and after World War II, France's economy following World War II, not the best. A lot of land, bad economy. Pretty much we'll see where this is going. So yeah, it is time for some anti-colonial business. However, France, rather than the British approach of trying to either make a commonwealth of nations, or the Spanish or Portuguese or Dutch approach of incorporating lands into their main metropolitan country, France goes for a third approach, pretty old-fashioned. Use military force to maintain the hold of all these territories. And while in Madagascar this already wasn't going well with the uprising in 1955. In 1954, a conflict with the Indochinese would begin. This is the story of the French Indochina War. Sources are linked down in the description. Let's begin. In 1887, the decision was made in July by Napoleon III that France needed more trade and territorial expansion within the Asian territory. And considering, luckily for the French, Indochina was beyond the British reaches of Burma and the Dutch reaches of the East Indies Company, well, just the East Indies at that point, and luckily the Kingdom of Siam was actually quite leaning towards the French. Nobody was really claiming this pretty large chunk of territory, so the French bagged it in July 1887 and began colonising the region. However, as you can see, I think these images coming up on the screen right now, unfortunately, those are cut-off heads you will see, or about to see, say it all really, of how some natives were treated. And like much more most French colonies, this one was colonised the same. Literally landed in wouldn't like Annam and moved north, so modern day sort of Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon, moved north and took total control of the territory and subdued all the natives by about 1907. So yeah, beginning calendar 1887, by 1907, had full control of the territory. And in World War I, many Indonesian, that's confusing, French Indochinese. We're just going to say Vietnam. We're going to jump to many Vietnamese, Cambodians, and Laotians fought for the French in World War I. Actually, you'd be surprised, a lot of the soldiers, in fact, more Indochinese people than like Tunisians and Moroccans, I think, actually did serve on the Western Front, which is pretty interesting. Despite back then you couldn't really jump on like a British Airways flight from Heathrow, could you? You had to transport them long distances by boat. But no, many French Indochinese people did fight in World War I. And by World War II came around, of course, that fuel for sort of French Indochina nationalism, Vietnamese, Laotian, Cambodian nationalism was of course fueled as they felt, like many other territories, their work for the France needed paying off debt. Unfortunately for both Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and even the French, the Japanese showed up at the beginning of World War II and decided they wanted territory. And again, that meme of we're being liberated. And what is it, that meme? Oh, I wouldn't say freed, more under new management. Very much the case here for French Indochina. The Japanese were just as brutal as the French as holding the territory. And as we've seen in the previous video, when Vichy France was installed with Philippe Pétain as president, French Indochina was now subjugated under Japan, who was Adolf Hitler under Nazi Germany, allowed Japan to hold the territory. So yeah, and that was it. Again, don't want to go into events of World War II. That's kind of beyond the point of this video. It's focused on the French Empire. I do recommend researching that. But in 1946, on the 19th of August 19th of December 1946, the French Indochina War did begin, because after World War II, France returned and allowed to keep French Indochina. But of course, by then, individuals such as Ho Chi Minh and an individual whose name I can't even pronounce, we've got Ho Chi Minh No Nakudu Grip, I don't know how to pronounce his name, I really do apologise, were really promoting not only Vietnamese independence, but also communist ideologies, and were very much aligning themselves with the USSR and Joseph Stalin. So pretty big tensions were about to be brewing here, given of course it's the Cold War. So on the 9th of December 1946, the French Indochina War did kick off instantaneously. However, the French had to contend with the very, very well-trained Viet Cong, guerrilla-style tactics, hiding in trees, setting down traps, killing many, many Frenchmen, while the French were just firing bullets, couldn't even see where they were going or what enemy they were shooting at, because they were that well concealed. I'm sure anyone who's seen any oversimplified video on the Cold War will of course remember that. And that was very much the style of fighting throughout the war. And these of course were pockets of resistance. It was very hard for France to do much during the French Indochina War in terms of actual military progress, because Vietnam, very big, long stretched country. The French would just simply station troops in individual towns and villages, which although was good for trying to hunt down the Viet Cong, Viet Minh, it's quite hard because they could spring up from anywhere. There's no real actually line of defense or line of attack like you have in standard warfare. This is one side, this is the enemy, they fight to try and win territory. It was simply the French getting ambushed many, many times. Kind of similar to the British in the Boer Wars, if you like. The First Boer War, anyway. That was France's role, what's going on in French Indochina. And the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, the influence of the war, took place and kicked off on the 13th of March 1954 and lasted until the 7th of May 1954. And the French garrison there was completely surrounded and obliterated by the Vietnamese and, Viet Cong, Viet Minh forces. And on 26th of April 1954, the Geneva Conference was held, and by the 1st of August 1954, the French Indochina War did conclude, which saw as much as 1,250,000 casualties, many of which were killed. Sadly, it was nearly a 2-to-1 ratio of civilian to military personnel deaths. On the 26th of April 1954, the Geneva Conference was held for French Indochina, granting French Indochina full independence, and Laos and Cambodia would be independent countries from Vietnam, and Vietnam would be divided into the north and the south, one communist and one capitalist regime. So the French Indochina War was over, and a lot happened in these 8 years, and all rather quickly. France simply could not hold the territory, and it had to withdraw. France's role in Vietnam is very much still experienced today. They still have baguette and croissant fast food restaurants. French as a language still spoken there, and I suppose ultimately, although in the short term the French did lose the Vietnam War and they did have to blow up the territory, the process of assimilating their culture paid off. Like with so much colonial past, French, in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, so many of them do speak French. They have French too. They do have French cultural aspects, and yeah, Vietnam was a very, very interesting experiment by the French. Border disputes with Siam were settled. It was actually done. That was all done quite diplomatically and peacefully, but of course, intense subjugation of the natives, many human rights violations were, of course, by today's standards breached, and France found itself in this very, very vast, interesting territory. Like I said, the last place you expect to find a Frenchman, really, Vietnam, but indeed they were there between 1887 and 1954. So that is a 67-year period. They were in Vietnam, and they did learn a lot there from their guerrilla-style tactics, which could be used later in the most brutal war in post-World War II history, in kind of anti-colonial wars. That's a story for another time. So yeah, the long-term causes of the French Indochina War, obviously the Vietnam War. We all know what that's about, but again, that's not the video. This video is just about the French Empire, not the Cold War tensions. there is a differentiation there, people. So yeah, that is the French Indochina War. Really, really interesting bit of history. And yeah, I think interesting to learn about these aspects of the French Empire aren't often spoken about or thought about. And yeah, like I said, indeed the French were in Indochina, and it's weird. Like I say, we always think about the Americans in Vietnam, but indeed the French were there first and doing just as much warring as the Americans were. So yeah, that is, I'm looking at my notes. Yes. That is the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you in the next YouTube video. Goodbye.